State TV, aka Fox News, has been crushing LTC Vindman. And here's one of the ugliest examples.
Here we have a U.S. national security official who is advising Ukraine while working inside the White House, apparently against the president's interest, and usually they spoke in English. Isn't that kind of an interesting angle on this story?
I find that astounding, and some people might call that espionage, but it doesn't actually seem to add any new facts to what we know.
John Yoo is the man speaking there, former U.S. Deputy Assistant Attorney General. Welcome to Primetime. I respect you taking this invitation.
Chris, thanks for having me on and giving me a chance to, I hope, clarify what I was trying to say, which was I wasn't questioning Lieutenant Colonel Vindman's patriotism. I have a lot of respect for people who wear the uniform, who are decorated for service in Afghanistan and Iraq. When Laura was reading me the facts of the case, what I was focusing on was that it seemed to me the Ukrainians were engaging in espionage, and I really regret the choice of words, but I was thinking about Ukrainians engaging in espionage.
I hear you, John.
And
look, if you say you're sorry, that's good enough for me on this show. But I just want to go through it because you're a smart guy. I've done my homework on you. Laura Ingraham was trying to assassinate the character of Vindman. That's what she does. She's a proxy for our president. She's a brilliant legal mind. She's a talented communicator, and she is trying to protect this president. How could you have thought she was talking about Ukraine when she was obviously talking about Vindman and these ugly suggestions that he was working in both sides? You know for a fact they came to him for help with Giuliani. He was doing his job. How could you let her get away with that?
I really do think that the Ukrainians are the ones engaged in espionage, and I
How
agree.
is
when
that
I
espionage?
went back and looked at the
you
the foreign
thought
government
that's what
tries
she
to
was
make
referring to.
contact. No,
Go ahead, explain.
no, I was listening to her description of the story, and what I focused on was a foreign government trying to call an official in our National Security Council and get advice on how to deal with Rudy Giuliani, who I agree with you from the last clip has just gone completely off the reservation. And I think that's, to me, an effort to make a contact and engage in espionage, but not on Lieutenant Colonel Vindman's part. I really actually don't have any doubts that he did the right thing in reporting his concerns up the chain of command. And I just want to make clear, I'm not questioning his patriotism in any way. I actually
What do you think about Laura Ingraham
real...
doing exactly that? I know you like going on Fox News. I know you defend the president from time to time. I have no problem with that. You're welcome on this show to do the same thing. But you're going to go on a show and listen to somebody try to impugn the character of a man you're now calling a patriot? What do you think of what she tried to do?
What I was saying, and this is after, I think after the clip you showed, was I wanted to say, which I think I did, was that actually Lieutenant Colonel Vindman's presence or point was not actually materially important to the story because he was confirming the facts of what we already knew, which was that President Trump had made a call with the president and had seemed to ask for a quid pro quo between releasing Ukrainian aid and conducting some investigation into Hunter Biden and his service on natural gas companies.
Right. You don't have any question about what actually happened here, do you? I mean, do you need any more proof with somebody with your pedigree that the president clearly wanted an investigation of the Bidens and clearly they were holding up aid in a meeting until he got a public recognition that that would happen?
No, actually, I don't have any doubts about that because you can read them in the transcript of the phone call that the White House released on. So that was my point, was that Lieutenant Colonel Vindman shouldn't be the key question or key character in all this because he's just confirming the facts that were already laid out in the previous testimony and in the telephone call.
Now, 2 points. One is, why wouldn't Ukraine, when confronted with this bizarre situation where a guy who has no business and no role in U.S. diplomacy is hammering them for very specific things that are very curious, reaches out to someone they know who's in charge of the relationship to say, what do we do? You really think that's espionage?
I think on the foreign government's part it is. Usually you would talk to the State Department, diplomats on the scene. The National Security Council is a very sensitive body.
They did, though. They talked to Volker. They talked to everybody they could because this was crazy time, what was going on.
No, and I don't blame the Ukrainians for trying to do what they did. But
you just said it was espionage.
To try to call an intelligence official in the National Security Council on their part sounds to me like espionage. I think the Russians and Ukrainians have been up to all kinds of things throughout this entire investigation to our national detriment. I think we're being played sometimes for fools by them. And I have no doubt that what they're up to is espionage.
Do you think that could be a component of what's going on with Mr. Rudy Giuliani? That all of a sudden he winds up working with two people to advance the president's interests who are now indicted and have all these connections to Russian funny money, and we're getting wires of money that oddly resemble the amounts that they gave him? Do you think that's part of the component there?
Oh, yes. I think actually part of what's going on is that people in our government, or actually in the circle of private people around the president, are getting played by the intelligence services of other countries. I think that's an inescapable conclusion.
Well, I see that with Russia, but I don't see how Ukraine was playing the president. What happened with Ukraine was the president putting an agenda on them. I mean, is there any other way to see it?
Well, of course, what the phone transcript shows is that the president wanted them to conduct an investigation. He wanted them to do a favor. And then we're seeing these contacts, these communications where the president and Rudy Giuliani and Ambassador Sondland are trying to pressure them into doing that investigation as the cost or price of a meeting and then later foreign aid. Chris, I don't disagree with you. I think the hard question on impeachment now is not the facts of what happened. I think those have been proven out. It's whether this is a high crime and misdemeanor, or whether this should be decided in the Senate in a trial, or whether this should be decided at the ballot box in November.
I think it's a legitimate argument. I think that you can hear good faith arguments about why this isn't worthy of removal. I think we're a little bit far away from that. But the idea of triggering the mechanism, abuse of power like this, this is not only what the founding fathers were worried about. We just came out of the Mueller probe, John, where the only thing both sides agreed on was that you're not supposed to mess with foreign powers. The president did this literally on the same day Mueller was saying, Mr. Trump's not out of the woods. I mean, how do you take that as a signal of anything other than this president is willing to abuse his power no matter what?
Chris, you've had me on your show before. I've been happy to say that. I agree with you on the fact that the framers were worried and did draft the impeachment clause about to get at presidents who put their personal interests above the national interest when it came to foreign policy. The other thing, though, they were worried about is impeachment being used as a tool by Congress to 100%. Control presidents.
100%. Federalist Paper number 65. Alexander Hamilton says this cannot be just about numbers, that if you have more, you get to get rid of the person, that this process will awaken all of the ugliest partisan impulses, and it has to be better than that. No question. And I think we have to go through this. But here's my thing for you, John. Do you regret not saying to the host of that show, hey, don't talk about Vindman like that. We don't know that he's a never-Trumper. Don't accuse him of being a spy. This is ugly stuff. This is beneath us as Americans. We don't make that kind of xenophobic and jingoistic arguments about our own.
Well, what I wish I had said, and I just didn't have time to, is that I didn't know the facts. I didn't know about Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, and I wish I had said, let's find out more and let's hear the facts first before we rush to any judgments. And I didn't mean to rush to any judgments, Chris. I really appreciate what you're saying, and I do share your views on this. I think I made a mistake in not being clear in what I thought.
I'm happy to give you the opportunity to clarify it. I'm not into the gotcha contest. That's the other place where you hang out. That's what they're trying to do, and I understand why. We both know they can't deal with the facts in this situation. One last quick question. Rudy Giuliani's investigation is criminal and national security. It's an intelligence investigation. Do you think that there is legitimate concern on what you know so far in terms of there being teeth to looking at him?
Well, if you look at the facts that are coming out or just the suggestions that are coming out in the newspapers, I can see why his old office, the Southern District of New York, and the U.S. Attorney's Office has opened an investigation. It does seem he was associating with, again, these Ukrainians who might have been receiving money from sources abroad and trying to funnel the money into the president's campaign. That doesn't mean Rudy Giuliani is guilty of anything, but I can completely see why he's under investigation because of his relation with these people who definitely have violated federal law.
And I believe that for us, in terms of the political analysis, you can't say that the president didn't know what he was doing and that he didn't really mean it that way, because Rudy Giuliani answers all that curiosity. He was doing a shadow parallel operation to get done what the president wanted to get done. John, you're always welcome on this show. I did not want you stained with Chris. The kind of BS that's going on over there. I know why they're doing it. I wanted to give you a chance not to be a part of it. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I guess I'm barking up the wrong tree, but I feel unleashed. Man, these are rough. That last one was for the dogs. In President Donald Trump's retelling of how American troops cornered ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi before he killed himself, a new hero was born: the dog.
He reached the end of the tunnel as our dogs chased him down. He ignited his vest, killing himself and the 3 children. Actually, the canine was hurt, went into the tunnel, but we lost nobody.
Later, as he was taking questions about the raid that led to Baghdadi's death, Trump again referenced the dog.
Our canine, as I call it a dog, a beautiful dog, a talented dog, was injured and brought back. But we had no soldier injured.
And then again.
It's incredible that nobody was killed or hurt. We had nobody even hurt. And that's why the dog was so great.
Sidebar, Trump also repeatedly told reporters that Baghdadi, quote, died like a dog, end quote. I'm not sure what that exactly means, but it doesn't sound so good for the dog. End sidebar. Now, information about this hero dog was relatively limited. In a tweet days after the Baghdadi raid, Trump said this, quote, "We have declassified a picture of the wonderful dog, name not declassified, that did such a great job in capturing and killing the leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi," end quote. Oh, that is a good dog. And within days, the Trump campaign was even raising money off this hot topic. Quote, "In honor of all the great dogs who serve our country, show your support with this USA camo dog bandana," tweeted Trump 2020 campaign manager Brad Parscale. Quote, "The Trump campaign salutes our 4-legged heroes," end quote. All of which got me to thinking about Donald Trump and, yes, dogs. Because like everything with Trump, there's a pretty big backstory here. So Trump does not have a dog in the White House, which makes him the first president since William McKinley, way back in 1897, not to have a canine companion. Which has been noted lots of times by lots of Trump's detractors. Quote, "How does the president not have a dog?" Barbara Streisand asked the Los Angeles Times in an interview in late 2018, adding, "He's the first president in 120 years that doesn't have a dog in the White House," end quote. Babs, she knows her presidential history. So we know Trump doesn't have a dog, but what's harder to answer is why he doesn't have a dog. After all, dogs are widely seen as political gold. People love dogs. Dogs humanize people. It's science. Trust me on that. Hell, even Vladimir Putin gets it. The Russian president is a noted dog lover and was once gifted a dog by visiting dignitaries. I got you this dog. In 2007, meeting with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, Putin's black lab, Coney, was seen, just walking around the room. Quote, "The dog does not bother you, does she? She's a friendly dog, and I'm sure she will behave herself," Putin said. And no, Coney does not bother me. Now, speaking of other dogs that don't bother me, what a segue. Here is a look at some past presidential dogs. Bo and Sonny. Barney. Buddy. Millie. Checkers. Him. Also, her. Now you're asking yourself, wasn't that just a gratuitous ploy to show a bunch of pictures of cute dogs? Oh, you bet it was. Good job by you. But let's get back to Trump and his lack of a dog. He's actually addressed this at a rally in El Paso, Texas in February as part of an extended riff on the dogs used at the border to sniff out drugs.
You do love your dogs, don't you? I wouldn't mind having one, honestly, but I don't have any time. How would I look walking a dog on the White House lawn? Would that be... right? Sort of not for, I don't know, I don't feel good. Feels a little phony to me.
So, Trump doesn't want to get a dog because doing so would be seen as politically craven. Oh yeah, that makes sense. He's never been accused of being politically craven before. Whew. Now, Trump's detractors, like Babs, see something deeper and more troubling in Trump's canine-free White House. They view it as evidence that he only truly cares about himself and lacks any sort of softer side that animals tend to bring out in humans. Quote, Donald was not a dog fan. His first wife, Ivana, wrote in her memoir of her life with the billionaire businessman. She said that she once brought a poodle named Chappie into their house and said that whenever Trump went near her closet, quote, Chappie would bark at him territorially, end quote. Dogs, we don't deserve them. And that is the point. We make New Point episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. Check them all out.
By some of the most beautiful words in our country's history. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States. It goes on immediately to establish Article 1, the legislative branch, Article 2, the executive branch, Article 3, the judiciary. The genius of the Constitution, a separation of powers, 3 co-equal branches of government to be a check and balance on each other. And it's to that we take the oath of office. We gather here on that opening day with our families gathered round to proudly raise our hand to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And that is exactly what we are doing today. Sadly, this is not any cause for any glee or comfort. This is something that is very solemn, that is something prayerful, and that we had to gather so much information to take us to this next step. Again, this is a solemn occasion. Nobody, I doubt anybody in this place or anybody that you know comes to Congress to take the oath of office, comes to Congress to impeach the President of the United States, unless his actions are jeopardizing our honoring our oath of office. So I'm grateful to our committee chairs for all of the careful and thoughtful investigation they have been doing as this inquiry has proceeded. And today, the House takes the next step forward as we establish the procedures for open hearings conducted by the House Intelligence Committee so that the public can see the facts for themselves. This resolution ensures transparency, advancing public disclosure of deposition transcripts, and outlining the procedures for the transfer of evidence to the Judiciary Committee to use in its proceedings. It enables effective public hearings, setting out procedures for the questioning of witnesses and continuing the precedent of giving the minority the same rights in questioning witnesses as the majority, which has been true at every step of this inquiry, despite what you might hear fulminating there. It provides the President and his counsel opportunities to participate, including presenting his case, submitting requests for testimony, attending hearings, raising objections to testimony given, cross-examining witnesses, and more. And contrary to what you may have heard today, we give more opportunity to his case than was given to other presidents before. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for making that point so clearly. And these actions, this process, these open hearings, seeking the truth and making it available to the American people, will inform Congress on the very difficult decisions we will have to make in the future as to whether to impeach the president. That decision has not been made. That's what the inquiry will investigate, and then we can make the decision based on the truth. I don't know why the Republicans are afraid of the truth. Every member should support allowing the American people to hear the facts for themselves. That is really what this vote is about. It's about the truth. And what is at stake? What is at stake in all of this is nothing less than our democracy. I proudly stand next to the flag, and I thank the gentleman from New York for providing it for us. this flag. So many have fought and died for this flag, which stands for our democracy. When Benjamin Franklin came out of Independence Hall, you've heard this over and over, on September 17th, 1787, the day our Constitution was adopted, he came out of Independence Hall and people said to him, Dr. Franklin, what do we have, a monarchy or a republic? And he said, as you know, he said, a republic, if we can keep it. If we can keep it. And this Constitution is the blueprint for our republic and not a monarchy. But when we have a president who says, Article 2 says I can do whatever I want, that is in defiance of the separation of powers. That's not what our Constitution says. So what is at stake is our democracy. What are we fighting for? Defending our democracy for the people. You know that in the early days of our revolution, Thomas Paine said, the times have found us. The times found our founders to declare independence from a monarchy, to fight a war of independence, win, to write our founding documents, and thank God they made them amendable so that we could always be expanding freedom. And the genius, again, the genius of that Constitution was the separation of powers. Any usurping of that power is a violation of our oath of office. So proudly, we all raised our hand to protect and defend and support the Constitution of the United States. That's what this vote is about today. And we think the times found our founders, the times have found others in the course of our history to protect our democracy, to keep our country united. The times have found each and every one of us in this room and in our country to pay attention to how we protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, honoring the vision of our founders who declared independence from a monarch and established a country contrary to that principle, honoring the men and women in uniform who fight for our flag and for our freedom and for our democracy, and honoring the aspirations of our children so that no president, whoever he or she may be in the future, could decide that Article 2 says they can do whatever they want. Again, let us honor our oath of office. Let us defend our democracy. Let us have a good vote today and have clarity as to how we proceed, why we proceed, and again, doing so in a way that honors the Constitution. We must honor the Constitution in how we do this. We must respect the institution we serve. And we must heed the further words of our founders, e pluribus unum, from any one. They didn't know how many be or how different we would be, but they knew that we needed to always be unifying. So hopefully as we go forward with this, with a clarity of purpose, a clarity of procedure, a clarity of fact, a clarity of truth. It's about the truth, it's about the Constitution. We will do so in a way that brings people together, that is healing rather than dividing, and that is how we will honor our oath of office. I urge and I vote and yield back the balance of my time.
It's pretty impressive that the Democrats, almost completely, with the exception of these two Democrats, completely aligned. The Republicans, no defections at all, no time left. They're going to give a couple little Nancy Pelosi's in the chair, and that's significant in and of itself. But 232 in favor of this resolution to formally open up an impeachment inquiry of the president, and 196 opposed. Here's Nancy Pelosi.
Does any member wish to change a vote? On this vote, the yeas are 232. The nays are 196. The resolution is adopted without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
All right, there you have it. A very historic moment indeed. Dana, let's step back for a moment and take a look at this picture.
Yes. 232 years ago is when the Constitution was ratified and set in process, into law, this process to potentially happen. And the fact that the House has only considered this 4 times in those 232 years is a reminder of how incredibly historic this is. And the fact that Nancy Pelosi was in the chair, she doesn't usually preside, even though she is the Speaker of the House. And not just that, I was told she actually voted yes. And it is the tradition of the speakers of the House to actually not vote. They usually don't vote on legislation or on resolutions unless they want to make a point. She wanted to make a point, both symbolically and by sitting in the chair and with her vote, that she is all in on this. And that is a big shift. And we should remember that. She was the leader in reluctance. She was the leader in pushing back against the growing tide of the Democratic base, saying, we elected the majority in the House in order to take on this president. He's running roughshod over us. He is not he's not responding to subpoenas. He's not responding to witness requests, nothing. And then this Ukraine phone call came up and the whistleblower emerged. And everything changed and everything shifted because of that one moment, and even more so now that they've actually been able to do these depositions and talk to civil servants, not just political appointees, but people who were very concerned about it. And that is where this situation is now, but it is important to remember that it took a while to get here, even though the House Speaker was getting so much pressure to start this, because that is why so many Democratic rank and file members and voters think that they gave her the gavel in the first place in 2018.